Stardate 30013.47. Welcome to Star Trek Discovery Pod, a kind of smart, kind of funny podcast covering new and classic Trek. I'm your finally unpinned from a gravity grenade captain, Mariah Gossett. With me on the view screen, we have
Clyde Haynes. I'm not crying. You're crying.
Wow. And you have like your protostar. Dag nabbit, they still can't do it. It's a new year. They still can't do it. Protostar core breach. Paul should touch it.
Close you did enough. It, Paul. You got it.
No, I did it. No, I don't give it to me. No.
You made it. You made it. Tonight, we are reviewing and chatting about the final 2 episodes of the first season of Star Trek Prodigy, Supernova Parts 1 and 2. But first, we just have a couple of reminders for those tuning into the live stream, or if you're listening to us on the interwebs. Paul, can you remind listeners where they can find us?
Hey, listeners, I'm here to remind you to subscribe to our podcast on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. All links are at StarTrekPod.co. And if you love this content, and I hope you do, you can help us at Patreon. Oh, I'm really falling apart here, guys.
It's okay, guys. You got it, Paul. I believe in you.
For just $2 per episode at patreon.com/StarTrekPod. Boom.
Boom. Clyde, how can people engage with us during the live stream this evening?
If you happen to be watching online, wherever you like to watch, like YouTube, and you want to talk to us, you got a comment, you got a question, then feel free to type it in the live chat. And you can do that very simply by typing in capital P, capital O, capital D into the chat. We'll take a look at your comment, your question, your thought, and maybe we'll read it out loud or respond to you. And also, in a moment, you'll know what time it is. If you got that special synopsis, massive thought thing that stood out to you and you want to tell us what it is, just type capital H, capital F into the chat and we'll take a look at yours.
Indeed, we will do all of that. Also, thanks for being patient with us, y'all. We were traveling for the holidays, and then I know I was out sick. I was truly sleeping all day. I had a terrible, the doctors still don't know what it was. It was negative for COVID. I was negative for the flu. I was just down and out for the count. My body just said, Mariah, you need to take a very long nap. So I did that. So thanks for covering for me, guys, when I was out.
Let me ask you, I had something similar. It lasted a day, and all I did was I want to just die in the closet.
It was 5 days for me. It was long. I had a fever and like a migraine for like 5 days. It was terrible.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, more than 24 hours, but maybe my immune system sucks harder.
well, you are in a Borg cube, so
I am living. Yeah, Paul thinks I look like I'm in a Borg cube. For those who are just listening to the pod.
Oh, is it interesting? Yeah, I can see it.
I don't know why my webcam, which I finally got working again, refuses to acknowledge the lights that are on in my office and has decided that it's just a green tinge behind me. So Borg cube it is.
You're Gossett of 9.
I don't think I'm allowed to even have Gossett.
there we go.
I am one of 3.
One of 3
for tonight. All right. Are y'all ready to jump into chatting about Supernova this evening?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay. So I think we'll talk about them kind of together because I think it makes sense since they are a part 1 and 2, but I will give the credits here. So episode 19, Supernova Part 1 was directed by Andrew Schmidt, written by Aaron McNamara, and episode 20, Supernova Part 2, was written by Ben Hibben and directed by Kevin and Dan Hedgeman. Written by Kevin and Dan Hedgeman, directed by Ben Hibben, who are our show creators. And I think it might be that time in the podcast where we get into some hot freaks. We got to get into some hot freaks. Clyde, what'd you think of these episodes? Oh, we lost your microphone. Did you hit the off button?
Paul,
what did you think of those episodes?
I thought it was adequate. I thought it was fine. It was great. I do feel that the title of the episodes really kind of give away what's going to happen. So I'm a little like, you could have done a little better with that. But like, aside from that, I felt like everything kind of wrapped up in a way that I felt like it was leading to, you know. And so I guess like, you go to a really nice restaurant and you get an adequate meal. You're like, oh, I kind of wish that it was something more surprising. So I guess I wish there was something more surprising. I don't have any real gripes, but like I have little quibbles here and there.
Right.
But that's me.
Yeah. Clyde is still working on fixing his microphone, maybe. Oh, now you're on mute, Clyde.
Can you hear me now?
There you are.
All right. There we go. Okay. It's an interesting setup here. No, I'm probably going to detour just a little bit from Paul. I really liked what I saw over these 2 episodes, and I got a chance to do a watch along with our Patreon crew here this afternoon or this evening, to rewatch them. And it's one of those things where I'm looking at where we are now. We've got 20 episodes in the first season, but I really I thought these were strong, and there were a lot of moments where I was a little bit surprised, right? Like, especially for a children's show. Like, I was surprised that so many people, so many ships were blown up, right? So much damage happened. Like, for lack of a better way, the villains won, right? The villains got what they want. Usually, especially in a children's show, the villains didn't get that far. This was definitely much more kind of Borg-esque at TNG. And so I was a little bit surprised by that. We lost the character in this one in terms of kind of the Janeway hologram. Like, a lot happened. And what it told me was, when I think of over the 20 episodes, we've seen some good, we've seen some okay. I still don't know what to make of Starflight. But it tells me that if I fast forward to like season 3, they might really find their legs, and this might actually go down as one of the best animated shows. And I think they might find a wide audience who aren't children. Like, I'm still very much questioning whether or not kids actually watch the show and whether it's primarily watched by a bunch of adults. And I think if they can figure out who their audience is, this might be, I don't know. I've got big plans for this because I really enjoyed this episode. Like, it was hard to watch a second time. There were moments that really got me. It just felt mature.
Yeah, I think I agree with both of you. There are things that, like, anytime I felt like I had a little like I had to remind myself it's a kid's show, right? It's like a lot of the dialogue is still a little hokey pokey at times, and like the jokes are very kid jokes. But I think that is what reminds me that this is a kid's show first and foremost. And I actually was listening to, so Jason Mantzoukas was on an episode of TV I Say with Ashley Ray the last 2 weeks, which is a really great podcast if you want some good TV like reviews, criticisms. I think Ashley Ray does a great job, but he described Prodigy as like, Star Trek's coming of age in space show. And he said it was for young adults. I think he probably misspoke, and he's like, it's the first one they've kind of aimed towards kids. But I think I walked away being like, wow, they really, like, if I was a kid, I'd probably be really upset losing Hollow Janeway by the end of this. Like, I got very emotional, and I was like, I am a fully grown human, like, watching this show. And definitely got like a little choked up. Not tears in the same way I've gotten from other Star Trek episodes, but very like, oh, this is sad.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Like when she goes like, I can make a copy. I go, no, you can't.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was like, I can already see what's happening.
It wasn't even that. My brain goes like, that's why they couldn't make a copy of the Doctor.
Yeah,
like you just can't do that. Yeah. But then, like, where I got going like it's when like Janeway goes to the Vulcan. When the thieves, they go, You mean the people who saved our lives, blah blah blah, and in my presence, you were referred to. I was going.
Yeah.
Yes.
Janeway had like a couple really good
Yeah,
speeches
she
in
did.
this,
Yeah,
like,
no.
like from different point of views.
Mhm.
Like for real, Kate crushed this.
Kate
Like,
Mulgrew really
beyond a
crushed this whole
I mean,
season.
Yeah,
I mean,
that
like,
She really did.
100%.
I
We
didn't
can
get to talk
completely
about
agree with
the
that.
episode where her and Doll swap bodies with y'all, but I was just like, how fun this must have been for Kate Mulgrew. Like,
No, I thought, I thought like they're definitely like, and Clyde, to your point, or to your love, so many ships, so
So
many
many
ships,
ships.
so many ships.
So many
every
ships.
class of ship.
Defiant
Yes.
class, Sovereign
I-
class, Akira class, boom, boom.
I mean, it was, and yeah, it was great. It was
basically like
absolutely.
when I was watching it, when I was going like, oh, I can literally hear Clyde tear from like across, the 405.
I did not tear. But if you think I didn't pause, walk up to my television screen
And look at all those
and
ships.
look at the ships, you'd be crazy. Yes, no.
Yeah.
I thought it was great. I just want to clarify, Marge in the chat says it's mature bad. No, what I mean by mature is, I mean, it's sophisticated. It's probably a better word to say. Like, it was nuanced.
Yeah.
Like, this felt like grown up writing, because look, I got kids at home. There's a ton of TV shows in my house. Some of it's super entertaining, right? If you're a parent and you haven't watched Bluey, you're missing out. Just hilarious. But there's not a lot that happens from episode to episode. It's kind of like, it's jokes, right? It's just jokes. This wasn't that. Like, there was a story in here that was captivating is probably the best word I could use for it.
Compelling.
Good job. Yes. Better word.
It was definitely compelling. I think too, I try to think about like what other coming of age TV we sort of have right now that is focused at young adults. And I mean, like, technically, like, Stranger Things, I think, started out as what should have been like a kids show, that like coming of age sci-fi show. Obviously it's morphed into other things. There was Paper Girls on Amazon that came out recently, that's based on a comic book. But like, the coming of age tale is a tale as old as time. And so I think it is refreshing to see them use some maybe adult tactics in a way that the adults are going to get, but in a way that like kids aren't going to necessarily absorb every moment of. But I was, there's some sad moments. We see our villain sort of die, even though he still exists in this time. It's like time travel business. So it's like this version of him has passed on, which I thought they handled, like, how that death moment with him and Gwen really beautifully. I thought that was like a nice moment to see our kind of main villain have a slight redemption there at the end of this episode. What did y'all think of the redemption for Gwen's dad?
I thought it was.
Go ahead, Paul.
It was good enough. Like, I think it was fine. Like, for me, for my taste and my adult, sophisticated, mature taste, I feel that, like, I would want to see his change more. Like, the change just happened so quick in a way that I didn't really understand why he was so blah blah blah. But that said, like, I bought it. I think my biggest quibble was, like, I go like, why is it that all the cool aliens, die in, like, glorious, like, flame or whatever, and humans just like, I'm dead.
we don't dissolve and get absorbed into our family.
We don't become like space stardust or nothing. Like, we're like the Asgardians, just go, like,
yeah,
nothing.
There's no ascension for us.
No. I mean, it's nice to. Oh, go ahead.
It's nice to go. No, you go.
I was like, it's nice to think about, because it's like one of the things, as much as I have some like qualms with Neil deGrasse Tyson as like a person, but one of the things he talks about a lot is that, like, we're technically all made of like the same stuff that stars are made of, right? Like, we're made of the same elements. And I was like, oh, I like when they like kind of incorporate some of that space and like science knowledge of like, oh yes, like he just gets reabsorbed into the universe in this way because we're all made up of the same stuff. And he's on a literal ship powered by a star. So it was like,
right,
some fun layers there.
And, and his people, they're sustainable living. So
You truly, you don't have to dig a grave. You don't have to.
It's great. Save real estate too.
That's right.
I don't know that I looked at it as a redemptive moment. I didn't. I looked at it as he was a dad, and what we see is these villains who have no parental instinct, right? And so part of their villainy is that they mistreat their children, right? They're so single focused on what they're trying to achieve that they don't even care about their family. And I thought what we saw with the Diviner was a little bit more realistic. He has this single purpose, but he's also a parent. And so what he did was less about it's not like he changed his mind. What he did was he was like, and he's been true to this the entire time is, forget the rest of them, not my daughter. Like, we're going to go get my daughter. We're going to go get my progeny. And even when they got on the ship, they were like, kill everybody. He was like, with the exception of my progeny. And so this was a moment where when it came to someone holding her hostage, he did what his character, him being a dad, would do. I don't think he changed his mind at all. He just stayed in character. Again, that feels very, and I was like, I can dig it. Did it make me hate him any less? I don't know. Not really.
Yeah. I mean, I think to your point, Clyde, like we also see him, he's sort of like trying to make sure that Gwen will stay safe no matter what, because even when he releases Janeway from the hospital bed, he's essentially like, I'm saving you to guarantee that if I can't complete my mission, you will save my daughter. Because that's what he sort of says to her is like, I hope by doing this act of kindness that you will make sure my daughter is okay.
But not to push back, but I will. Like,
push.
He could have just, if you go like, send the transmission, and he could have gone, okay, boop. And then Gwen would still be fine. It's not like, Jamira would have just stabbed her.
Well, I think I don't know. I think he saw he had leverage. I think he was like, I have a small amount of leverage in this moment.
Well, I agree with that. And I think not only did he have leverage, I think what he realized is that, the Vindicator was not to be trusted. Yeah. Right. And one of the things that we saw early on is when they first came in contact with each other and he told her about his progeny, she said, you violated the rules. You were not supposed to procreate. And so I think what he realized is he couldn't trust her, and that given the opportunity, she might kill Gwen because she shouldn't exist. Because she shouldn't exist. And so I kind of think that's where he was at, and he was kind of going through the steps. And what do I have to do, to your point, Mariah, to ensure her safety?
Yeah, I did enjoy the hand-to-hand combat fight sequence between Essentia and Gwen. I thought that was really fun, seeing them both get to use their sort of like morphing weapon thing that they have. And it was one of the times when I was like, oh, this is like a really well animated sequence of like a full fight sequence, and then we see sort of like you get to see two characters that have similar skills and capabilities going at each other versus when we have the Dreadnought going against the rest of our little crew who while have grown so much are still children. And the Dreadnoughts are truly a scary villain.
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
you're absolutely right.
I was going like the second time I watched it. The first time I just went along with it, but the second time I watched it, this like, and Jenkem goes after the Dreadnought. I go like, this is basically a bunch of kids going up against the Terminator. Like, this cannot end well. Like, children should not be put in this position.
Never. You're absolutely right, Paul. I also want to call out, Mariah, you talked about Essentia and that fight with Gwen. Can we give some love to Jamila Jamil? Because when I watch shows like this, it's super easy for me to pick up on voices. And so when I think about every time Daveed Diggs opened his mouth, I'm going, I know exactly who that is. Like, I don't even see the character. I'm like, oh, that's Thomas Jefferson from Hamilton. Like, I'm like, oh, it's okay.
Are you the same way with Jason Alexander?
Nice.
Sometimes like even like Jinkum, I'm like, oh, okay, Jason, okay. But as I was watching this with the watch along, and so not to plug the Patreon, but if you are Patreon, you can do the watch along with us. It wasn't until somebody reminded me and they said, "Man, Jamila is great," that it was like, "Oh yeah, she is in this." Like she did such a good job that it took me out of focusing in on her voice. So again, listen, if I don't enjoy one of these Prodigy episodes, I will say it. And I'll be like, yeah, I didn't connect with it. Again, not to bring in Starflight, but this one was good though. This one was really good.
A lot of phasers.
A lot of phasers, a lot of pew-pews. I also really enjoyed Ella Purnell, who is the voice actor for Gwen. I thought her she's the only character who then has to speak multiple Star Trek made-up languages in this episode, and I thought she did an incredible job.
You're not wrong. Like you think that she's been speaking Klingon for a very long time, and I don't know how she pulled up Ricard, like for real. Like
her and Mary Chieffo, like hats off to how well they really master a language that they have to pop in and out of. That is
Mary
Chieffo's
kind of Mary Chieffo's kind of the gold standard as far as I'm concerned. Like she's really up there with like Worf, like Michael Dorn. She's up there. But
Kilpaw, good job, everybody. I also wanted to ask y'all I thought it was nice to see, especially in the second half, when they finally kind of devise a plan and figure out a way for them all to work together. We see how far this crew has come from the beginning of the series in how they figure out how to work together. They all there's no questioning of each other. They're just like, that's what you think, that's what we're going to do. Like, we believe in whatever you have decided or what your skill set is, which I thought was also nice to see, because this is one of the only current Trek series where we get a full 20 episode series order, which we have not had since 90s Trek. And I think it shows, I don't know, it was a fun. What did y'all, I guess this is the question, what did y'all think of this as the cap to this season, right? So we've had some fun episodes. We've had the holodeck. We had Starflight. I was like, Fleek. It's not Starfleet. Starflight. We've had some chances, I think, similarly to, like Voyager. We got to go off on these little mini adventures, but keeping sort of the end goal moving forward. And we got a lot of character development this season. But what did y'all think?
Clyde, why don't you go?
I thought so. I thought you get what you get when you have 20 episodes, right? And it was interesting because when you said that, I was like, yeah, we got 20 episodes. It's the only one. And I was thinking, man, can I get 20 episodes of Discovery? And then as soon as I said it in my head, I was thinking, yeah, but the problem with 20 episodes is that's a really high number to keep the consistency high. And so I think what happens is you then worry, like, are you saving stuff? Like, is it going to connect? Like, what happens? And then I think often, including with Trek, you get to the area, this idea that the penultimate episode of the season is better than the actual finale. And that's, maybe it's cheating because it was a two-parter, maybe. But I thought that they did a great cap on these last two episodes for me. So much so that in transparency, we have screeners. So we have the ability to watch these ahead of time. And I watched episode 19 and then immediately started scrambling for my screener for 20 and realized that I lost, I couldn't remember what the password was to the website. So I had to wait like everybody else. But that I say that to say, I got excited. Like I was like, what happens next? Like, oh my goodness. And so they really did a good job of building this tension. And then they've left us in this interesting place where I have to admit, I'm interested to see what happens next. Like, it was a great head fake early on for us to think that this season was going to be about Chakotay, and it wasn't. Almost not at all. So,
yeah. What about you, Paul?
Like I would ask you guys, like, like what is your favorite season of Star Trek? Of all the Star Trek properties, like what's your favorite season? Like I easily go season 5, Deep Space Nine, followed closely by season 6, Deep Space Nine. I think those are near perfect seasons of Star Trek. And and you're absolutely right, Clyde. I feel like 20 plus, you're gonna have some filler episodes, but like I look at this 20 and I go like, what I find remarkable about it feels like 20 with still serialized. That's actually something that we didn't get in any of the seasons. Deep Space Nine the closest, but like half of them were like Dominion based, and the other one was like, oh, there's a Pa Wraith or whatever, right? And so like I think it was actually quite a remarkable feat to get this done. Though to be fair, like they're half-hour episodes.
I know.
Like,
I was wondering that too. I think it is successful because of the shorter
format
episode, the shorter format. To your point, Clyde, I was trying to think of like what show would I want 20 episodes of right now in the current Star Trek like world. I think Lower Decks would work because it's also a shorter format, and I think they could
I thought you were
handle
going to
it.
say Picard.
I was also then going to say Strange New Worlds because it is a more episodic show. Yeah. While there are those longer things, I do agree. I think with both of y'all's points in that when you like Discovery is that puzzle box show. And while I would love more episodes about like a little bit more character investigative episodes, I don't know if I would need 20. It might be like going back to that original like 13 order that they used to have, 14 order, just to give us a little bit more breathing space in there. And then yeah, I think my favorite season of Trek is seasons 4 and 5 of Voyager. It's like when we get 7 of 9 coming in.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great.
Which I think are some of my faves.
I think it's great. Another thing that like in this episode, part 2. Oh, another thing. If you haven't watched the episode yet, like you guys should watch it like part 1 and 2 together. Yeah, because it feels like one episode. Like truly. I watched the first time I watched it in halves, and I go like, oh, this episode's boring. Well, no, it's not boring. It's another part of So 1 and 2 should be, but like when the ensign was talking to Admiral Janeway about how she was I know, right? Like it's from the episode Counterpoint, which is one of my favorite Voyager episodes. It goes like, I was one of the people that you saved. Tear. I know that so like, though I say that the episode is adequate, it is still at a very high level of like emotional achievement, because my cybernetic heart is not what it's not that perfected yet. But anyway,
I would say, and I've got to give what's my favorite Trek season, but I want to say, I think to your point,
Enterprise,
Paul,
baby.
Yeah,
never gonna
it's not gonna happen. No.
I'll rip so hard on Enterprise. I have to say, every episode of Enterprise I've ever watched, I enjoyed. So
that's right. You
I enjoyed it a lot.
You got faith.
It's been a long time since I admit that.
It's been a long time getting from here to
there. Yes. Listen, I will say that I enjoyed watching it with a group of people a lot more than I did watching it by myself. I will say that.
I gotcha.
I think when you talk about that little nugget, like that reference to Counterpoint, there's a formula here that would make a lot of sense, and that is if this was a situation where this became a show where Star Trek parents could watch it with Star Trek kids.
I mean, that's what they're trying to do.
I know they're trying to do it, but like I remember, the first time when I was a kid watching the original Aladdin, like Disney's Aladdin, with my mother, right? and she laughed so hard. Later on, when I watched it, when I was a little bit older, what I realized was there's all these jokes that are layered in there that kids don't get. Kids are enjoying the show, but it's this secondary layer for parents. I think they're trying to get there, but right now, this still feels like parents are enjoying this more than the kids. Um, and yeah, so I'll kind of say that, but I did love that counterpoint moment. I'll also say that for me, when I think about my favorite seasons of Trek, it's probably any of the later seasons, not the last season, but the later seasons of TNG, where we're getting some character development, where we're seeing like Deanna Troy is no longer in like the one piece cat suit, but now she's, you know, trying to get her bridge certification, like some of those things.
Mhm.
When Wesley, we either figure out what Wesley's doing or he's no longer in the show, but Geordi and Data are going through this. We've got this strong character development. It feels like everybody kind of found their who they were. Those were my favorite seasons, and then I really like season 3 of Discovery. And I'll say that I thought season 1 of Strange New Worlds was fantastic. That's kind of where I'm
perfect
at.
track. Perfect track.
And Mariah, to your point, like when you talk about more Discovery, I thought the same thing. I think what I'm missing is season 1 of Discovery when it ended. You know what we had? We had these short treks.
Yeah.
That they never went back to. And I love those because what they did was they provided the extra. So it's like, okay, so you get 13 episodes. Do you need another 5? I don't know if you need another 5. I take them, but I don't know if you need them, right? It felt like what I needed was like another half of 5, right? Like just to that focused on that character development where we see more about Tilly or more about the ship. Like there's all these pieces that we want to know, especially with Discovery, because you've got this incredible bridge crew that we still know very little about.
Yeah. I wonder, because like I kind of long for the days of like, and I know we can buy them on box set I think now, but it's like when I would buy the DVD box sets and there'd be all the like extended cuts, deleted scenes, the like commentary from cast and crew, which they give us a ton of I will say as a fan, I do feel like we get a ton of behind the scenes stuff for a lot of these shows, and I appreciate it and I would love more of it, but I feel like we're missing some of that, and I felt like the short treks really gave us that piece. I also thought they were just really fun ways to see some like newer writers, newer directors, like people really getting a chance to jump in, because like I know Anthony Rapp has been spending a lot of time shadowing the directors on Discovery, and I'm like, I'm ready for a bunch of short treks directed by Anthony Rapp. You know what I mean? Like
to your point, Mariah, I'll tell you what I miss most about those DVD box sets, right? Is the commentary which they would do is you get to watch the movie, the episode where they turn down the volume to what's happening on screen, and you're now listening to a director, a writer, and a character talk over it. Kind of masterpiece theater or
Master Pancake.
Yeah. So what you're doing is you're actually like they're talking about the scene that happens, right? That's the stuff that I miss because again, we're Trek fans, so we will always ask for more. We will absolutely ask for more. A couple more things that I wanted to mention. When again, because I did love what someone in our Slack channel called shit porn. What I liked about seeing all the ships was they had a Gorn ship.
I know. Yeah, that's right.
And I was like, there are all these little itty bitty Easter eggs that I'm like, kids don't understand the significance of this, right? But coming out of Strange New World to see that Gorn ship, that was a big deal. That was kind of a nice moment.
I know. It's like one of those moments I'm like, okay, do they just have like a once a month check-in where all the writers' room sits down and they're like, all right, what are we all referencing this season? Like, what's going to be our Easter egg that ties us all together? Which to me means we better be getting some Gorn action in Discovery, because I think that would be incredible to see some future Gorn.
Well, it looks like we have one of those Mariah Predictions.
Official
I
predicted.
don't think the Gorn make it. They don't make it to 900 years in the future.
Ooh. But what if they've just like, I don't
Hibernated.
know. No, what if they've like evolved into something even more scary? I don't
More
know.
Gorny.
More gorny.
I will say that like I feel like per the reference observation, I feel like this show does better references than even Lower Decks, and I think Lower Decks has a really high standard. But the way that references are like or callbacks are like just like the what you call it the counterpoint callback. I feel like
Oh, we got
is
Salamander.
yeah
This episode
yeah.
too.
And it's so seamless. Whereas like in Lower Decks, they're definitely winking at you, for the joke. But this is so seamless, and you're like, oh, I'm part of this world.
It almost feels like Lower Decks it's the secret handshake club. Like to get the reference, they're deep cuts. Like the references sometimes in Lower Decks, it's like it's almost as though they're trying to figure out. Okay, it's like a crossword puzzle. Can you figure it out? Like these are tough. Where with Prodigy, it's kind of like, no, we're gonna put them out there and then watch you just gush all over.
100%. Mariah, you were saying.
Oh, I was gonna ask. So I had some other things I wanted to talk about. Oh, I want to. Speaking of references, we get some live people references this episode, the final episode as well. Dr. Erin McDonald, the science consultant for one of the science consultants for the Star Trek franchise. She is the it's both modeled after her, and it is her voice playing the scientist who tells Rock Talk to check out xenoanthropology in the science lab, which I thought was really cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, look at that.
Nice.
Like, well done.
And then also xenoanthropology is what Michael Burnham specialized in before she became a captain. So
again, a very obvious reference.
Yeah, reference. They're like, here you go.
Like I immediately was just like, oh, I got that one. In Lower Decks, I'm like, people are like, oh, did you catch this? And I'm like, no.
Maybe on the fifth watch.
I completely missed that the DJ was
our eye patch guy.
Yes, completely missed that the DJ was the eye patch.
Yeah. Do y'all? I have a theory. So I think that we did not see the name of the new ship coming out of the space dock, and I think that's going to be the USS Prodigy.
Hey, you were good with these predictions, man.
Because we didn't see the name. I don't know. And then
to your point, with the exception of Strange New World, like there is an idea, and maybe Picard, like there's usually this very significant name, the name of the show. Like it's pretty significant, and we haven't gotten that yet.
Yeah, it would be interesting.
That's a good one. I'm probably still thinking they're going to name it Voyager. Again, obvious reference.
Maybe. I mean, I feel like I saw a lot of the Twitter banter going on after the episode aired last week, and a lot of folks were just like, who knew the line to get us a Voyager like sequel was going to be a children's animation show. And then a lot of people calling for, like, after season 3 of Picard is done, are we going to get a series that's just called Janeway? And it's essentially picking up where like Prodigy is leaving off in some ways and seeing more of a live action there. We shall see. I did also see an interesting and fun theory I wanted to run past y'all by Diana King over at TV Fanatic, kind of predicting what next season and potentially season 3 would be, which would be following sort of the original motion picture series model. So next season would be more Wrath of Khan, and it would be the Wrath of Vindicator, because she just yeets out of the ship inside of that dreadnought. So she is still out there, like fully capable of being our main villain next season. And then that would mean the third season would be like Search for Spock, and that would be our actual search for Chakotay. And we're just gonna really drag out the
if
search
we're
for
gonna go that way,
Chakotay.
what's gonna happen then is Vindicator, like, causes Murph to sacrifice himself, and then the next season with the search for Murph.
The search for Murph.
Search for Murph. Well,
it rolls off the tongue. It rolls off the tongue.
I don't like that, because that means that whole episode where we saw them trying to save the whales means that we're gonna have a return to them a whole season.
Well, that's
about
season
them
4.
trying to sell
We
some
don't have
whales.
to worry about that. It's season 4.
Season 4, they're gonna have to save season 4 is them saving Gwen's planet, and it's gonna have something to do with whales.
It's so listen, if there's a season about whales,
I mean, we've already gotten an episode.
I'm out.
We've had an episode about whales. Remember, they already had to save some whales in an episode this season.
Speaking of Gwen, I gotta know, like, how did you guys feel about like her not being on the ship? Right? Like,
I feel like that's not going to last very long.
That's my thought, but I was kind of like taken aback, but like,
yeah, that's why I think it's going to be something with Vindicator. Like, something will happen to where the whole band will have to get back together. We might not see her. She might be our B plot for a couple of episodes on her little journey.
Can you do that with a kids episode, like with a kids show? Like,
yeah, we had A and B plots this whole season.
Well, what I mean is like, okay, so in Discovery, you take Tilly off of the disco, and she's off, and she's doing her own thing, and she's separate from that. We didn't appreciate that. We didn't love it. We kind of sort of understood it, but we didn't too much care for it. I just don't know that you see it that type of thing happen that often, where you take someone like Gwen. She's got this other plot separate from the other characters, and you let that go on for 5, 6, 7 episodes before you meander her way back to the group. That seems like a lot for children.
I don't know. Have you seen The Mandalorian?
Also not for children.
Yeah, I did want to ask, what did y'all think of Gwen and Dal's little smooch in this final episode? I almost wish they had just left it at the little pinky holding hands. I just thought that was so much cuter. And then the kiss was very, I don't know.
Like, my response is like, yeah, it's okay. Like, I don't know who that's for.
I didn't either.
Because I don't know if kids are wanting that,
I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to like put myself back into like my like maybe 13-year-old self, and I think I would. I'd be like rooting for like romance because like,
well, then it's for 13-year-old you.
Yeah,
my 11-year-old would have not been for it at all.
Yeah.
Should have been like, why?
Yeah, I don't know. It could also be, I feel like there's an interesting generational difference right now too, that I feel like there isn't as much pressure on like romantic relationships as much as there is on like friendships and platonic relationships. But I also don't know. I have not been 13 or 14 in a very long time.
Well, I was there last week.
How was it? How was that time travel for you, Paul?
That's right. Well, no. I'm aging very poorly. That's all.
I have no desire to go back to 13 to 14.
No, it's so bad. Everyone is an asshole at 13 and 14.
Which would make me indistinguishable. Like no one would know. Like, oh man, he's just one of us.
Hey, Choopy, look, Choopy says, "OMG, you guys have not a romantic." I was gonna say that's not true. Listen, it's hard for me.
You are
to
right.
root.
You call a spade a spade. No. You don't let us gaslight you. You're right.
Listen, I'm all for all the romance. When you talk about the other shows, I'm for all the romance. You asked me what some of my favorite TNG shows are, and I'm going to talk about Minuet and Laura Brahms, like right there, right off the bat. Boom.
Minuet and Laura Brahms. Love it. Love it.
I'm all for the romance. I'm struggling with having romance for 2 animated children. Like maybe it's the dad in me. I'm just like, hey,
I think I also
graduate from the academy before you start committing to relationships.
I know that they like care for each other. I think I wanted the like romance part to be teased out longer. That's why I think it would have been like there's the accidental kiss already. And then I think it would have been Gwen with the little handhold. That would have been the like, oh, maybe. And then like next season, I think it would have felt more earned. It felt like a little too like
it's interesting you say that because I feel that in the earlier part of the season, I felt like they were setting it up. Like you can see, like
yeah.
And in the middle, I felt like there was no acknowledgement of it. They were just pals.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It felt like it went into a friendship zone. And so then I feel like that awkward kiss then reopened that door, and I needed that door to stay like propped open a little longer.
What they'll probably do is several episodes, like flashback episodes, where like it's just from Doll's perspective, going like, "Does she like me? I don't know," and like it revisit
computer playback the video.
Exactly, playback. Was I being a creep here?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I agree with you, Mariah. Like, I like the idea of it just being simple and kind of slow going. But also, I think what didn't surprise me was we did get some foreshadowing. I think when I can't remember who it was, but somebody asked, "Well, what happened to your daughter? Like, what changed?" And the diviner was like, "She met a boy," and I was like,
Boom.
"Oh, here we go." Like it's coming. So I wasn't completely shocked by it, but I think I could go for it to be a little bit slower.
That was my only thing. I was just like, oh, it felt too much like a nice bow. Do you know what I mean? I was like, y'all already got renewed. You knew that going into like these last couple episodes, I think. I don't know. I guess I really don't know. That production was so long for them.
Like, I would you be okay with Jenkum and Gwen?
I mean, there's definitely not any chemistry there.
No.
Also, I feel like
there's
it's
so many jokes in that, but we're gonna stop.
Yeah, it's also so funny to me that like literally every other voice actor I think on the bridge is within that like either child to young adult age range, and then you have 50-year-old Jason Mantzoukas playing a 16-year-old Tellarite. So that it's just funny.
I think the interesting thing is also like we talked earlier about voices, right? And so part of the thing with me hearing voices is also me thinking about characters. My issue with Jankum is when I hear that voice, I can't help but think about the League, right? Yeah. Like so from a character wise, you talk about Jankum, like, well, he seems cool, but I'm constantly trying to tell myself he's not creepy.
He's not Rafi.
He's not Rafi. Yeah, he's not. So.
I like to think more of Derek from The Good Place.
There we go.
Which is also like not Derek from The Good Place. Not Derek.
Yeah, but not as bad as Rafi from the League. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure like kids don't know who any of those characters are. So
right, although they shouldn't. If they do, parents are doing something wrong.
Yeah. Although in that same interview on TV, he said he's gone from having a lot of like frat bros coming up to him, talking to him about Rafi, to a lot of like younger folks who are seeing The Good Place for the first time, who come up to him, talking to him about Derek. And he's like, I much prefer the people who like me from being Derek.
Well, I mean, but he's also, I think he's in Big Mouth as well as playing a pretty disgusting child. So
well, all of the characters on that show are pretty disgusting, but yeah,
absolutely. And a few of them are from the League. So it that's where, I mean, I think this is an interesting character for him. It actually has changed how I see him though, and his range as an actor too. So
yeah. I also think I wanted to just like shouts to the whole crew. Like Brett Gray as Doll, I think really did a great job as playing our lead character and really bringing so much to that character. And I think we learned so much about his augmentation. And I think that'll be something that'll be interesting to continue to play with next season. And I'm excited that Zero gets a new fancy body to kind of body thing holder being holder. Yeah, he gets the new prosthetics. So yeah, I'm excited to see everyone's little like Starfleet upgrades, and that is something interesting. I feel like that was one of my small nitpicks. I was like, why wouldn't they just say like y'all can just apply to the academy? Like, I get maybe not wanting to let them skip the line, but they're essentially just going to go be, I mean, I get it for the show structure. They're just going to go be Janeway interns, but like, which is going to be a much more interesting show than Prodigy goes to the academy, you know? But I still think an academy show would be fun.
Listen, an academy show would be fun for us.
Yes, that's true.
I mean, though, actually, no, I take that back.
There's tons Monsters High. There's so many
exactly.
shows. Sabrina,
I mean, basically,
like,
you're talking about
explains it all. I'm going back to like what I
going
watched.
back way back.
Hey Arnold.
Hey, you were doing a good job there. I was like, oh, look at Mariah. She's staying in the know. She knows what's hot in the streets. No, but if you think about it, though, the idea that you'd have a Star Trek, basically middle school or high school show, could be very popular with kids.
Yeah.
Right. The interaction between other students, and you get the cool academy people and the mean academy people, like it would probably be easy to write because there's so many of those shows out there.
Well, the show is called Picard: The Early Years. Because and then you have Picard do it.
Would you
like
do if I sang out of tune? Anyway, okay.
Exactly, but you have Picard like at the Star Trek Starfleet ball and doing the Wednesday dance.
It'll be a hit on TikTok in no time.
That's right.
Yes. But no, I think what they've settled on is let's have 6 Wesley Crushers, right? Let's put some kids on a ship and or lower decks, the younger years, basically. So I think it's going to be interesting. I think, look, you had me because you've given them a new ship, and now there's going to be a ship, which means they're going to do ship things, and they're going to be ship fights.
I think what will happen is that there'll be a ship, and then there'll be an accident or something, and then it'll just be Janeway and the interns, and then I think
Paul, I think what you're bringing up is a really interesting point, because what we've seen them on a very cool ship and do things very, very well, right? With Dal as captain. The thing about Star Trek is it's very military-ish in terms of the order and structure. And you've got Janeway. Even if we go back to Voyager, I mean, where Janeway typically expects people to do what she says, to bring up ideas, but she sits in the chair, she makes the decisions, and she gets input from everybody. It'll be interesting to see how these children fall in. And is that an interesting show, right? Do they come in? You already got my man Daveed Diggs, right? Like, he's the first officer. Right? Is he now going to take a back seat to Dal? I'm curious about how this interplay between them and actual Starfleet officers, right? Or if it will be just another lower decks.
Yeah, I think it would. You go, Mara.
I was going to say, I like your theory, Paul, in that there's some kind of like the ship goes through a wormhole while the rest of the main bridge crew are on a planet. You know what I mean? Like something along those lines where like...
And then Janeway, like they're lost on some sector of space, and Janeway turns the camera and goes, "Not again!"
Exactly. Or they accidentally launch the ship and Admiral Janeway isn't even there, and we get another hollow Janeway again. Something along those lines. Yeah, I don't know. What about you, Clyde?
It'll be interesting to see. What did we always say with some of the other things that we watch? You got to trust the writers. Trust the writers a little bit. So I'm believing that they know what they're doing. I think they had a pretty successful first season, and so it'll be interesting to see. I mean, this is the hard part, right? Like you had a good first run. What do you do for the second season? A lot of franchises stumbled kind of into that second season before they found their legs. It'll be interesting to see what happens here.
Yeah. Any official predictions for next season?
More kissing between Dal and Gwen.
Probably. It's a solid prediction.
I think there'll be another Murph transform.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
I think we
Yeah,
get
I
a
hope
new
he
character.
I hope Murph gets cuter. I liked first iteration Murph more than this I mean, this iteration has more fun things to do, but I think the Blob was cuter.
No, I see that. I got nothing for Jenkum or Rock. Yeah, no, it's gonna be interesting. Like, I feel like, to me, like they kind of wrote themselves into kind of a corner with adding Janeway, new ship, blah blah. All, like, and not to say that you can't write your way out of it, but I have truly no idea as to how they're gonna get the dynamic that the first season set up, which is a bunch of kids and a babysitter, and have that play out again. And maybe it doesn't happen that way, but like I'm interested to see.
I want to tackle something before we wrap up here. I know we're going a little bit long, but Stress Free K says, for me, Dahl was an avatar for a black alien race, but then they made him an augment with no ethnicity, which I don't like. What do you guys think about that? Like, typically, while it's never been explicit, there have been races that I will say people have identified as black as races, sometimes positively, sometimes negatively, but an acknowledgement of at least their presence, most notably the Klingon race. We haven't really seen that in Prodigy, and maybe it doesn't matter because they have this very much inclusive, we all need a place to be and we're all different and we're from different places. What do you think about that? What do you think about Stress Free K's comment?
I mean, to Stress Free K's point, the Brett Gray is a black actor who is voicing the character, right? And so I think there is something to bringing your lived experience to the characters you play. And I don't know what their intentions were in the writer's room, but I do think it's a way for them to say, in this particular universe, Dahl is someone who is othered. And I think they're playing with that otherness in probably a way that I think happens in, you can't write out of the culture that you exist in. So like the writer's room is dealing with what's happening in the world that we live in too. Right. And so, yeah, I don't know. I think it's complicated, right? I mean, I don't,
Wait.
I'm also the white lady on the podcast.
Well, I'm sorry, Karen.
Ouch.
I think there's valid points there. And I think there's validity to I think there should always be more representation on television and
I guess for me, and this is just speaking to my sheer ignorance, and maybe I'm missing something in the series, but I'm not exactly sure I understand the comment. Was Dahl supposed to be black or black alien? Like, what does that mean? What do you think?
I think what Stress Free K is saying, and he's got some other notes in the chat, but
yeah.
There's this idea of just this representation, seeing people who look like you or knowing that you're represented or being able to say, hey, part of me fits here. I don't know that I ever looked at Dahl and said, oh, that's the black character in the group.
Oh, interesting.
But if you said that's the black character in the group, I'd be like, yep. Like I would completely accept that.
Like,
and part of that is probably because of the way he moves. Because I think the thing that I love about animation is that there's this idea of animation being written by artists, right? And the artist could be anyone from any background. But I think what we found is the really successful animation, as they're writing, they embody the voice actor who's playing that role.
Sure, 100%.
Right. And like the really good stuff always feels like you wrote for this character. And so knowing that you've created this character whose voice, who's kind of has this voice actor as a black person, black man, they, to Mariah's point, there are things that you're going to write in the way they talk, the way they move, their vernacular, the things they would naturally say, some of their facial features, it's going to come in. And I think the question here is just more about, if we look at Dal as purely this otherness, this augment, this referendum on another topic, do we lose that? My personal thought is a little bit like, I'm gonna give you a little bit more, right? And partly because of Star Trek's long history of representation, I'm going to kind of see where you're going. And this just might not be that story. And again, because for the most part, with the exception of Janeway, this, I don't want to call them a ragtag group of misfits, but this collection is largely alien and not a particular race. So this one seems like I wasn't offended by it. Normally I'm kind of like, oh man, there's a room of all these Starfleet officers and none of them are a person of color. Funny how that worked out. This particular time didn't really, I didn't really notice that.
Yeah, no, when you say it, I see what you're saying, and I go like, oh, I could see that. Like, I would ask, does Gwen look black?
That's an interesting question. It's a question that I've thought of, but I think primarily because of her is it hair? Is it there's some things there that I would question. But again, I think what we're looking at is it's alien, right? Right?
That's
and like that's where I've been leaning into, is that they're alien, right? Their race is different. This is not that topic yet, and we're getting to some of those same things outside of the racial topic. And again, if this was a standalone and this was my first venture, I might have more questions. But Star Trek as a franchise has generated enough goodwill for benefit of doubt.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. And I think there's something to like the storylines that they bring into the characters, like with Doll, the idea of like, I think there's some interesting ways they're playing with like the idea of not having, I mean, I was like, how do I say this? Right. So like the reason that a lot of like things get categorized as like Black culture, right, is because like there is no nationality culture for a lot of folks from that experience, right, because it was stripped away from them. And so I think there is some interesting parallels that they're bringing to Dahl within that, because he's essentially not been allowed to have a culture because he has been created in this way. And so there's something interesting to that, because like I've had a lot of friends who will do those like 23andMe things, and they're like, oh, they're like, I truly had no idea where any of my ancestors came from until they do those, and then they get to have that experience of finding that out. So I was like, there's some interesting parallels that I think they're playing with there, that I wonder, I'm sure they're cognizant of in that writer's room, like you're saying, Clyde. Yeah. I think they know what they're doing in some of those ways.
And I'll admit, I didn't want them to be an augment. I like this idea of search for culture and who am I? Because to your point, but again, that's an experience that I live, right? This idea of, I'll be in a room and people are talking about, oh, my ancestors came from Ireland, or my ancestors came from here. And I'm like, people are like, oh, don't worry about it, it's Africa. And I'm like, Africa's a continent, not a country or culture. So there is this sense of search for culture, right? Search for, where do my people come from? What were the experience of my ancestors that Dow was on that I could identify with? And to say that he's this amalgamation of a bunch of different is like, okay, that's a different story that I wasn't really expecting us to take, but I'll ride with you for a little bit and see where this goes. And what story are you telling? And what are the conversations that you're trying to get us to have and discuss? And I go, oh, okay. So what we're really trying to do here is we're an ongoing conversation about augmentation that really kind of kicked off when we were having the conversation about Una and Strange New Worlds. Okay, I see what you're doing. You're pulling some stuff together. Okay, we can have a separate conversation of why you didn't do that later, but okay, I see where it's going.
Yeah, I think then too in noting about Una is like there is then the possibility of like that created shared cultural experience of like other augmented folks and like what that would be like for Doll to find other augments and like that shared experience.
But to Clyde's point, like I can see how it shifted from possibility looking from the search for culture to just like extreme otherness.
Yeah, for sure.
That's what that episode wound up doing for Doll's arc. And although it is a creative choice, is it the richest choice? I don't know yet.
Well, I think it's part of the larger landscape. Like Mariah, you kind of hinted at it before, and I think you're onto something. Is the fact that we're not talking about writers who are in this bubble writing a story that's isolated, right? The one thing, if you're going to write for, there are few franchises. Star Wars, I think Star Trek are two big ones, is that anything that you write has to fit inside the larger body of canon. And there's Marvel's another one, right? It's because there's so many things going on at once that you I don't want to say that there's a path that you're on, but you kind of have to, if it's not a path, you have to consult with other people. And I think in this situation, they're looking going, there's a larger story that we're telling between these things, right? And when you think about augmentation and whatnot, this has been a larger conversation in the Star Trek verse the last couple seasons, because it's even in Picard when you think about artificial intelligence, right? Like they're having these conversations about otherness and if I enhance myself, right? Like I think my bigger question is, why are we having this conversation, and what is your social commentary about what's happening right now that I'm not quite getting? Right? Like it's a little almost subtle, like, okay, well, what are you trying to tell us? Like, what are you trying to get us to really have a dialogue about?
Yeah, I think the more adult conversation will probably happen next season on Strange New Worlds, because we, saw Una taken away at the end there. So we're going to have to resolve like whatever's going on with her. So yeah, but yeah, that's a good point, Clyde. I wonder what they are trying to kind of, Kurtzman, what you thinking, Kurtzman? We want to know what you're trying to tell
Mariah.
us.
All right. Stress-free K in the future. Can you drop those bombs at the beginning of the show?
An hour, 7 minutes later.
Yeah.
But no, I think these are all really good questions, and this is why I love our live chat group here. It gets us to talk about these things for sure. All right. Any other thoughts, feelings?
Looking at the notes.
R.I.P. Hollow Janeway.
R.I.P.
Okay, last question. Do you really think we're RIPing Hollow Janeway?
That Hollow Janeway, yeah.
You don't think there's some way that they're going to bring her back with her memories or something?
I think they're just going to give us Admiral Janeway. That's
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
But I don't know if they're going to like do a search and find a little bit of piece of her matrix or something where, I don't know. Okay.
I don't know. She served her purpose.
What's next?
Heartless.
Heartless. So what's next? I haven't dug in. I kind of want to be surprised. What are we expecting? What's the next franchise to give us some more track?
Picard is next, folks.
Worf is a pacifist now.
February 16th, we get the last season of Picard. I wanted to pose this question to the folks hanging out in the chat, also to our listeners. You can reach out to us on the different social media channels, or if you're in our Slack, you want to join our Slack for $2 an episode. It's a good month to get in, y'all, because right now we only have one episode planned for this month, so it's a cheap way to get on in. But what do you want us to talk about in this couple of weeks of off season here prior to us jumping into Picard? Is there episodes you think we should dig into? Do you want me to try to book some interviews with people? I can see what can happen.
Do we want to watch Clyde watch, Enterprise from cradle to nut?
Listen,
I don't
I
know.
got 3 seasons in. I've already promised them that I would go and do a couple episodes that we'd go back. I can't remember the ones that I agreed to watch, but I mean, come on, hang out on the Patreon. We'll do some watch-alongs.
Some watch-alongs will be happening. But yeah, what do you want us to cover? We've got a couple weeks here. We don't, the first time in a long time, we don't have any new Star Trek. What is this feeling, y'all?
Emptiness, sadness.
Empty sadness.
Time
to revisit.
Like fear. I feel like Data when he got his emotion chip, and then there was under the attack in Star Trek 7, and he goes, Data over here, I can't move.
Maybe we should watch some Worf episodes to prepare for this next season of Picard. I feel like we haven't talked about Worf in so long.
I took my wife on a Worf tour, last year, as far as
watching
in
San Francisco.
That's right. In San Francisco. No. As far as I go, here are some pivotal Worf episodes that shape the character of Worf.
All right. Well, we'll offline, Paul. Perhaps we have to do Worf Tour Part 2.
Maybe. I'm just happy Michael Dorn is working. I miss that guy. We don't see him very often in
we should probably do a lore, a lore, what you call it, a little lore
tour,
side trek,
little side quest
for lore, because he'll be in Picard, right?
He is in the preview.
So there you go. Okay,
I think that could be fun. All right, y'all. Well, that is it. We will let you know when we will be back. I think a Worf tour sounds appropriate in prep for this next season of Picard. I don't think any of us would be mad at some Worf episodes. We can dive into a little Deep Space Nine, a little TNG. Be a good time. Picard premieres February 16th. So we'll be back to our weekly schedule starting on the 16th. Other than that, we'll pop in and out the rest of this month with some special episodes. You can subscribe, rate, and review this podcast on Apple. Visit StarTrekPod.co to get links and also to visit us on Patreon. Clyde, can you remind folks where they can follow us on social media?
Yes, by all means, come hang out at Star Trek Pod on wherever you like your socials media'd.
Yep, we're mostly still on Twitter because it's still existing.
You said the dreaded T word. I was trying not to say.
I'm still hanging out on Twitter. I'm still there. You can still talk to me. No one sees my tweets. Thanks, Karen, for helping us out over there. Appreciate you.
I think Karen sees my tweets. I think that's about it.
I know that you start posting those videos of you eating Romanian pizza and being a SWAT team.
No. That's no one wants to see that. Trust me.
Thank you so much, everybody. Live long and prosper. Goodbye.
Bye.
Go fast.